Hello again, everybody. I'm back again with another update. I have not given an update in a while. Today is September 28th, 2022. I'm going to talk about all the hoopla with Hurricane Ian. For one, this storm is entirely manufactured, as all the others this year so far have been. There have been no natural storms this year so far. In my last video in June, I predicted a below average season this year for hurricanes, tropical systems. Based on the fact that most of the energy in the waters have been taken out by previous manufactured storms and low solar activity that has not replenished this heat back into the water. The sun has entered its 11-year maximum in the cycle, but it's a below average maximum. So, yeah, there is some heat being replenished, just enough, which is why I said they may fire up if you manage to get a few storms going this year in my last video. The only reason they were able to get anything going this year is because we're in a solar max, and in certain areas just enough heat got back in that water for them to get the motor going with a couple of these systems. I mean, by get the motor going is, as I've said in previous videos, what they do is they've got satellites up there. They beam down some sort of infrared heat energy into these systems to enhance the convection and keep firing this laser energy at these systems until the system starts to spin, and then it reaches a threshold point where the motor gets going. So the water temperatures don't even have to be as warm for them to keep these systems going once they get going. And it's very easy to tell when they're doing this. If you look on the infrared images of the cloud tops, you could see the explosions of this energy hitting the clouds. So this Hurricane Ian, which they claim is a Category 4, we're going to make landfall as a Category 4 in Florida today. If you look closely at the images, you could see they're putting into this system almost a constant flow of energy. They have to. If they did not, the system would dissipate within 12 hours and be carried out into the Atlantic by strong upper air winds. They have some sort of technology to not only keep the storm going, but also slow down its movement so that it doesn't get carried eastward by the upper air winds. If you look closely at the images, you could see that there's sort of a comet effect, like the storm is like a rock in the water with a current. It's being kept there. They have some sort of technology to keep a storm from being carried away by the upper air winds. If there was no technology, within 12 hours the storm would be whisked out into the Atlantic and off the East Coast. You look closely at the images, you could see the upper air winds out of the southwest. And this system somehow is not being carried by this wind. It's staying in place. So I looked at the reports this morning in Florida so far. The eye is only less than 50 miles offshore or less. The highest wind report I could see anywhere in Florida right now is a sustained wind of 39 miles per hour in Venice. Gusts to just over 50. If this was really a Cat 4 storm, conditions would be far worse than that. The winds would be much higher. Because the eye is just offshore right now, and these places are within the main part of the system right now. They should be getting higher winds if this is a Cat 4 storm. So, I had aspired to be a meteorologist when I was younger. I never imagined that this field would sink into blatant lies about strengths of hurricanes, to rouse fear in the population, to get the people to buy into global warming and all the policies that are associated with it that they're trying to put on humanity here. Of course, you know what's going to happen because it has been 100 years since Tampa has taken a hit. They're going to blow up this storm and hype it up, call it a Cat 4 storm when indeed the winds, that's a manufactured storm to begin with. There's no way they can get this up to a Cat 4. Energy in the Gulf just isn't there. And right now, like I said, the highest wind speed I could find in Florida with the storm just offshore the eye is just 39 miles per hour. This is not a Cat 4 system. The reports show that. I mean, it may not even be actually even a hurricane. We'll see when the eye gets closer in. But we'll see what my brother and sister-in-law says because they live right in the path of this storm. If they say it was nothing to this storm, then I know it really wasn't a hurricane. It looks impressive on the satellite, but again, it's all energy they're putting in with these laser beams from these satellites that's enhancing the rainfall many times of what it should actually be. And the long-term effects of this is going to be a further cooling of the Gulf of Mexico and of the oceans, an acceleration of global cooling. The solar max is a very weak one. They say it's going to be stronger than the last, but again, that's hype. That we have not had any X-class flares in quite a while, and normally you get them all the time with a regular solar max. The cosmic ray count is still holding above average. It has not even gone below the 40-year average, even though we're in a max. It has come down to only 2%. It even went down to 0%, but went down to average a couple times 3 months ago. It has bounced back up. So we're not really going to have a very strong max, and the key here is how long is the max going to last before it starts to slide back toward the next minimum. Will it last a couple of years? Will it last 4 or 5 years? What saved us from the last max is it lasted 5 to 6 years. If this one only lasts 2 or 3 years, cooling is going to be a lot more intense. in years to come. And the rest of the country, frost and freeze warnings all through the northern plains. Winter is already on its way, even though fall has just begun as far as the weather patterns. And pretty much Eon is the last chance, as I believe the season's going to shut down by October 1st. If it does, my prediction will be correct of a way below average hurricane season this year, in spite of Eon and all the so-called destruction it's going to cause, which it may not even be that strong of a storm. It's still going to be a below average season this year, highly likely. Fiona, again, they claim that this storm hit Canada. It totally disintegrated before it even got to Canada. It was not a landfall. It never made landfall. It got absorbed into a cold front with a developing low pressure over eastern Canada, sucked it into a cold front, and basically it dissolved in a matter of 6 hours because the water was very cold. They claimed the water was record warm up there, and that this thing was going to make landfall as a Cat 4 on Nova Scotia. I watched the storm, and as soon as it got out of the Gulf Stream, got above 40 degrees north latitude, it picked up speed, which they were hoping would bring it on shore as a hurricane, but it almost instantaneously disintegrated. And basically what Nova Scotia and Newfoundland got was a strong cold front with some additional energy that this system brought into it. It was not even a hurricane. It was nothing by the time it got up to that latitude. And the only other real significant storm was a fish storm out in the Atlantic that moved past the Azores. And the only reason that storm got going was because the Gulf Stream kept it going, taking a more southerly track across the Atlantic. So far we've only had 3 significant storms this year. All 3 of them were manufactured. Fiona did get going on its own for a while because it was over the Gulf Stream for a while, and the Gulf Stream is always warm no matter what. That water is going to be very warm, and it's warm enough to sustain a storm. But the Caribbean, this Eon was nothing in the Caribbean. Nothing. It didn't really get going till it got over Cuba. That's when they bombed it. And the eye formed as it was going over Cuba, which to me is another sign eyes of hurricanes don't form over land. Or when they're crossing land, they don't get stronger. Of course, the media portrayed it weakening when it went over Cuba. I looked at this storm. It was nothing over the Caribbean. As soon as it got to Cuba, it suddenly gained strength. And that normally doesn't happen with a storm. Normally it weakens if it goes over any kind of land, and then it re-strengthens out over the water. This one strengthened when it started going over Cuba. And it's originally strengthened when it was on the coast of South America. This was not a natural storm. So this is going to be it for this video. It remains to be seen what Eon actually will do to Florida, which I don't think is going to be half as bad as what they're saying, but we'll see. The wind reports seem to substantiate what I'm saying. So far, there's nothing even anywhere near hurricane strength going on in Florida, in spite of the storm being just offshore, but we'll see what happens when the eye actually comes on shore. I will be back with another update. Take care, and hopefully everybody in Florida won't fare as badly as they're saying.